All right, Reverie is pretty close to release. That's this deck right here. All we have to do before the release happens in June is to work out some details on how specifically we're going to pack and ship them. And that's because compared to other card companies right now, we aren't running through other distributors such as Art of Play. So there's a couple more details we need to work out on our end. But that being said, they are printed and ready to go. So this is what they look like. Now, before we take a look at this, I just want to give some basic info. These are printed through Room 1, and they're printed through a 270 GSM stock as listed here and on the bottom, which means these cards are extremely thin. If you know the Fontaine Black glitches, this is the same stock that those were printed on. And overall, I'm really happy with how they turned out. Now, one thing we noticed with how Room 1 prints, I noticed this when I personally unboxed Missing's Beam playing cards, which are also printed through Room 1, is that their cellophane wrapping is sometimes quite loose. Out of the ones that we've seen so far, they're pretty good, such as this one. They are not extremely loose, but for the ones that we have seen that are pretty loose, it's also fine. It's just something that I wanted to point out can happen. Like, if your cellophane wrapping is a little bit on the looser side, don't worry about it. It's just something that Room 1 does in their process. It's not some sort of error. And that being said, there is a pull tab. So the box itself has a soft matte finish, which I really like. It's not glossy, it does feel quite premium. On the front of the box, there's of course the logo here, and then there's tech information. The sides of the box both say Reverie. There's the brand logo on the top of the box and the back design on the back. There's of course piece through art on the flap of the tuck box. Immediately upon taking out the cards, you'll probably notice the thinness of them, and I'll get back to that because there are some important notes about how this deck breaks in. But firstly, I think it makes sense to cover the cards that you see when you open up the box. So the first two cards that show up on the deck are the two Jokers here. I really like the way that they look. I think they turned out very nice. And the next card is the Ace of Spades. That is actually my hand on the Ace of Spades. The rest of the cards are standard, except every once in a while you will see a pip that also has that kind of shutter blur. And that's of course because the back design of these cards is shutter blur photography of flowers. So to keep that theme, there's of course shutter drag on a couple of these pips. The Ten of Spades is one of my favorites. I think it looks really nice. So yeah, when you get this deck, you can also look around and see what shutter pips you can find. There are also some court cards that have that shutter drag effect as well, and I think that's pretty cool because they break out of the borders in some places. Speaking of the court cards, they are made with the back design showing through them. So that way they are nicely thematic to the deck, and they're still heavily recognizable as the core cards that they are. Here's my favorite card, the Three of Clubs. And yeah, once you run through the whole deck, you'll run into this card, which is just the Reverie ad card. An important note about the Jokers of this deck, just because of how thin the stock of this deck is it might actually feel weird if you take two Jokers out. And what I mean by that is I just removed those two Jokers. Because of how thin this deck is, it might actually feel a little bit too thin. Like this feels a little bit, it feels like I should have like maybe one more card in here. So of course, if that's the case, I would, in that case, keep the two Jokers and get rid of the ad card, but it's up to you once you feel them. Okay, so about breaking them in. This card stock is incredibly thin, and what that means is if you immediately open this deck and hit something like a backdrop, you're gonna bend like one particular card in a different way than the rest of the deck, and you'll start to get that kind of papery feeling where a lot of cards are bent different ways. My recommendation for that is, despite how thin and almost like flimsy they feel when you take them out of the box, once you use them for about 20-30 minutes, they start to feel a lot firmer and a lot more snappy. Like, I would describe the feeling when you take them out of the box as kind of like airy. That's how I would describe it. But literally just after 20-30 minutes of breaking in without doing any excessive like single card bending or anything like that, just doing like packet tricks like this or fans, they start to firm up a lot, and then I think that really makes it feel quite nice. But of course, all of that feeling is up to preference. I think if you want to have a feel that's a lot more standard, then you can have that kind of 20-30 minute break-in period and then check in on the feeling again. They'll feel a lot more traditional. And of course, I just realized I did not give, I guess, a proper good look at the back design here. So there it is. It is shutter drag photography of flowers. All the back designs are the same. It is a one-way deck though, that is important to note. And one last important thing to note, I guess, is that the red of this deck is not actually the typical red. It is slightly more orangey, and it's a lot softer of a red color. It's tricky to pick up on camera because white balance and color balance is all different here, but it is a little bit more orangey and a little bit softer to match the feel that you get on the back design. And yeah, that's essentially it. Once you have this deck in your hands and unbox it, that's the experience that you get. Stay tuned. Escape Card Art on Instagram is going to have all the updates for you. And once we work out all the details on how we're going to get these distributed and shipped, they'll be up, they'll be ready for purchase, and they'll be ready for you guys to enjoy them.